They thought she was just another quiet black girl with an old violin. But what they didn't know, what they never cared enough to ask, was that she carried an entire world inside that case. And one day she opened it and made the whole room stop breathing. Fifth period, Tuesday. The kind of day where the Ohio sun slants through smudged classroom windows and makes everything feel a little sleepier than it should. In room 213 of Toledo Central Middle School, the desks were arranged in that awkward half-circle teachers love, and the air smelled faintly of pencil shavings, gym socks, and whatever cafeteria mystery meat was being served that day. Back row, third seat from the end, by the window, that's where Grace Bennett always sat. Same spot, same silence, same black violin case tucked between her knees like something too fragile to be left on the floor. It was old, scratched, the handle wrapped in black electrical tape, and the edges dulled from years of being carried across city blocks and school hallways. If you asked most kids, they'd say they didn't even know her name. If they noticed her at all, it was probably because of the violin. She never raised her hand, never asked to go to the bathroom, never passed notes, never got caught giggling, never so much as rolled her eyes. She showed up, did her work, and left. To teachers, she was a blessing, quiet, compliant, low maintenance. To other students, she was invisible, which is how she liked it. What they didn't see was what happened after the bell rang. 4 blocks from the school, past the faded mural on Collingwood Boulevard and up 3 flights of crooked, creaky stairs, Grace shared a cramped apartment with her mom and 6-year-old brother Marcus. Apartment 3C always smelled like reheated noodles, cleaning supplies, and occasionally burnt toast. Her mom, Trina Bennett, worked night shifts cleaning office buildings downtown. By the time Grace got home, her mom was prepping dinner with one hand and ironing uniforms with the other. There were no after-school clubs, no mall trips, no group chats blowing up her phone. There was only the violin. The moment she got home, her backpack hit the floor and the case clicked open. No TV, no music. Just raw sound, notes that filled the room like breath, sometimes smooth, sometimes sharp, always honest. Grace practiced with a folded towel stuffed under her bedroom door to keep the neighbors from banging on the walls again. She didn't complain. She just played. No sheet music, just memory, muscle, feel. Her violin wasn't fancy. The peg on the E string slipped if she pressed too hard. The bow frayed at the edges like an old shoelace, and the bridge leaned ever so slightly to the left, forcing her to tune the whole thing from scratch at least once a week. But it didn't matter. It was hers, bought secondhand, passed down, worn in, but it sang for her in a way nothing else ever had. No one at school knew that. No one cared to know. They just saw a skinny black girl in hand-me-down hoodies, walking the halls with her head down in a violin case like it was a prop in some quirky indie film. Teachers smiled politely but never asked what she played. Students snickered when she pulled it out during lunch for a quick-scale run. Some whispered things, words like weird or trying too hard. Others just ignored her completely. Grace didn't respond. She didn't argue or defend or explain. She just kept walking, eyes ahead, shoulders squared. She had learned a long time ago that being invisible was safer than being misunderstood. But what no one realized, not the teachers, not the students, not even the assistant principal who passed her in the hall every morning without ever saying her name, was that Grace Bennett had been building something fierce, something beautiful, something that didn't need approval or permission to exist. She was a storm in silence, and the day they dared her to open that violin case and show them what it could do, thinking it would be a joke, a quick laugh before lunch, was the day everything changed. Because Grace wasn't just another quiet girl with a violin. She was the kind of quiet that comes before something powerful, and they were about to hear it It started like a joke, one of those offhand classroom moments no one thinks twice about, except the person it's aimed at. It was Wednesday, the day after the sign-up sheet for the school talent show went up on the bulletin board near the front office. Most kids ignored it, already assuming the same old routine. A couple singers, a dance crew, maybe someone with a lame card trick. No one was expecting anything new, especially not from Grace. Fifth period rolled around again, and the sun was slanting through the windows just like the day before. Mr. Buckley, the PE teacher turned talent show organizer, stood at the front of the classroom like he had somewhere better to be. He had a clipboard in hand and that same half smirk he always wore when he had to speak to a room full of tired middle schoolers. "All right, folk," he said, clapping his hands once. "Talent shows this Friday. Still got a few slots left. Singers, dancers, magicians, whatever. If you've got a talent, now's your moment." The class barely looked up. Someone in the middle row groaned. Another kid made a fart noise with his hand. Business as usual. Then Miss Dorsey, the math teacher who always acted like she owned the whole building, leaned in from the side of the room and tilted her head toward the back, right toward Grace. "What about our little violinist back there?" she said, loud enough for the entire class to hear. "Been carrying that thing around all year. Let's see what it can actually do." Her voice carried that sugary tone some adults use when they're pretending to be nice but really aren't, the kind that feels more like a slap than a smile. Mr. Buckley chuckled, not thinking twice. "Yeah, come on, Bennett," he said, grinning. "Show us what that thing can do. You've been hiding it long enough. Might as well make it worth the wait." That's when the laughter started. Not explosive, not mean at first, just the low, creeping kind that spreads like spilled soda on a lunch table. Sticky, fast, and hard to clean up. Someone in the second row whispered something about cat screeches. Another kid made an exaggerated high-pitched squeal, mimicking the sound of a violin being butchered. It snowballed from there. Snickers, side eyes, and one or two mock claps. Miss Dorsey smiled like she just handed Grace a compliment. "Just teasing, sweetheart," she added, brushing off the moment with a wink. Grace didn't look up, not right away. Her fingers tightened around the neck of her violin case. Her shoulders didn't move, didn't shake. But inside, her whole body was burning. She felt this kind of attention before. The kind meant to shrink you down until you barely existed. And then, clear as a bell, came her voice. "I'll do it," she said. The words weren't loud. They weren't angry. They didn't even carry weight. But they stopped the room cold. Mr. Buckley blinked. "You serious?" Grace didn't say it again. She didn't have to. She slid the case off her lap, set it on the desk in front of her, and reached for the clipboard, making its way around the class. No drama, no eye contact, just her name, Grace Bennett, on the line, written in neat, steady handwriting. Miss Dorsey blinked, her smirk faltering just slightly. "Well," she said with a nervous little chuckle, "that's the spirit, I guess." But behind that teacher voice, behind the carefully constructed, pleasant expression, was something else entirely. Doubt, maybe even fear, because no one had expected Grace to say yes, least of all the people who only ever looked at her when they were looking down. After class, the whispers followed her down the hallway like gnats. A few kids smirked. Some laughed behind cupped hands. One even made a fake violin motion as she walked past. Grace didn't respond. She never did. But as she turned the corner toward the back stairwell, her grip on the violin case tightened. Her jaw locked. By the time she reached home, apartment 3C, third floor, back of the building, the air was thick with the smell of reheated spaghetti and bleach. The kitchen light buzzed overhead, and her little brother Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor in a superhero t-shirt, watching cartoons with the volume turned low. "You eat anything yet?" her mom called from the kitchen, still in her work uniform, wiping down the counter. "Not hungry," Grace said, dropping her backpack with a dull thud by the door. "You better eat," her mom warned, not unkindly. "Don't make me come in there." Grace smiled just a little. Her mom always said that, but she never did come in. Not when Grace was about to practice. In her bedroom, the walls were thin, the paint cracked near the window, and a faint water stain spread like a cloud near the ceiling. Her mattress sat low on the floor beside a small desk, its surface covered in rosin dust and scribbled music notes. No computer, no headphones, no distractions. She sat cross-legged on the worn carpet, placed the violin gently in her lap, and opened the case. It was a ritual, sacred. The bow had frayed edges that tickled her fingers. The E-string buzzed if she didn't press just right. The bridge leaned a little more to the left than it should have. Every few days she had to retune the whole instrument from scratch. But Grace didn't complain. This violin wasn't just an instrument, it was her voice. She didn't remember a time before it. Her grandfather, who passed when she was 9, had been the one to teach her the basics. He played blues on an old fiddle that had more scratches than varnish. He used to say, "When you can't speak the truth, let the music tell it for you." So she did. Every day after school, while kids went to soccer practice or FaceTime their friends, Grace played until her fingertips burned. Her mom would press her ear to the wall in the kitchen and listen quietly. That was their system. No knocking, no interruptions, unless Grace hit a bad note. Then came 3 soft taps on the wall. Tap, tap, tap. Start over. Not out of disappointment, not punishment, just a reminder. Do it again, baby. Do it right. It was never about being perfect. It was about being honest. Most nights she played for hours. No sheet music, no YouTube tutorials. Everything was stored in muscle memory, heart memory, notes that twisted and stretched and bled through the strings, carrying feelings she didn't know how to say out loud. When she played, her hands stopped shaking. The noise of the day faded. The laughter, the stares, the smirks, gone. Out in the living room, Marcus would sometimes crawl to her doorway and sit quietly, hugging a stuffed bear. He never said much, just watched. One night he asked, "You gonna win the show?" Grace shrugged, eyes still closed, bow gliding across the strings. "I don't know." "Why don't you play happy songs?" he asked. She paused. "I do," she said. "They sound like crying sometimes." Grace looked at him. Sometimes happy and sad sound the same. He nodded like he understood, even if he didn't. In that tiny apartment, under the hum of flickering lights and the soft clink of dishes in the sink, Grace kept building something. Not just a performance, not even a statement, a truth. And when she played it on the stage, they wouldn't just hear her, they'd finally see her. By Thursday, the list of performers was taped to the glass outside the main office, right next to the broken vending machine that hadn't worked in years. Kids crowded around it between classes, their fingers dragging down the paper, searching for familiar names. There were the usual suspects: Derek Simmons doing stand-up, Ashley and her dance crew, Malik on piano. Then about halfway down the list sat a name most didn't recognize: 16, Grace Bennett. Some kids squinted like it had to be a mistake. "Who's that?" someone muttered, chewing on the end of a pencil. "That's the violin girl," another replied. "She's in my math class, never talks. Probably gonna play Mary Had a Little Lamb and cry." Laughter again, but this time Grace didn't flinch. She walked right past them, her sneakers quiet on the tile, her case in one hand like it weighed nothing. On the outside, she was the same girl she'd always been, head down, hoodie sleeves tugged over her wrists, backpack slung low. But inside, something was moving. In the cafeteria, Mr. Buckley shouted across the basketball court while pretending to care who signed up. "Show's tomorrow, people. No backing out now. He spotted Grace sitting alone at the edge of the lunch yard, her violin on her lap, quietly tuning the strings by ear. You ready, Bennett? He called with a grin, like he was still in on the joke. Grace looked up, not with anger, not even with annoyance, just a blank, unreadable stare. She didn't answer, didn't need to. Inside the teacher's lounge, Miss Dorsey sipped coffee with one hand and flipped through the talent show lineup with the other. When she saw Grace's name again, she rolled her eyes. Seriously? Who let her sign up? She did, said Mrs. Tran, the art teacher, without looking up from her crossword. She's got the same right as anyone else. Miss Dorsey scoffed. It's not about rights, it's about awareness. She's setting herself up. Mrs. Tran raised an eyebrow. Maybe she surprises you. Dorsey didn't reply, but the tightness in her jaw said plenty. That night, back in apartment 3C, Grace sat on the edge of her mattress with her violin and a blank notebook. Her mom leaned against the doorframe, drying her hands on a dish towel. You sure about this? Trina asked, stepping into the room. Grace nodded, eyes still on the strings. I already said yes. Her mom walked over, sat beside her, and picked up the bow. Worn, frayed, familiar. You don't have to prove anything to people who don't even see you. Grace didn't look up. I'm not doing it for them. Trina tilted her head. Then who? Grace was quiet for a moment. Her eyes drifted to the water stain on the ceiling, the same one she used to stare at when she was little. I guess. Me. Her mom smiled and pulled her close. Then do it right. The next day, the whispers got louder. Some said she'd chicken out. Others bet she'd freeze on stage. A few started to wonder, what if she could actually play? But even they said it with a smirk. Only Malik, the quiet 7th grader who played piano after school, walked up to her by the library lockers. You doing something original or a cover? He asked, hands in his pockets. Grace blinked. Original. He smiled. Good. Do something they can't compare to nothing else. She didn't smile back, but she nodded. And that was enough, because she hadn't been practicing for applause. She'd been preparing for the moment they couldn't look away. Friday came fast. The gym smelled like floor polish and anticipation. Scuffed wood, folding chairs, too many bodies packed into too little space. No parents yet, just students and staff, buzzing with the usual pre-show energy, half curiosity, half bloodlust. Everyone was waiting for someone to mess up. Phones were already out, cameras primed to catch embarrassment. Laughter was ready to be weaponized. Backstage, Grace sat on a metal chair, her violin across her knees, fingers tapping out rhythms like Morse code. Her palms were damp, her stomach twisted into knots. But she wasn't afraid. Not exactly. She'd played this piece 100 times, maybe more. It didn't have a name. It didn't need one. It started with a single note, stretched thin and quiet like it was trying to slip beneath a door. Then came the shift, the turn, the moment that made people sit up straight. Her grandfather once told her, make them feel like they've been dragged through something real. Then give them peace. That's what she'd built, a storm with a soft landing. 16, someone whispered near the curtain. She's number 16. The whisper didn't sound cruel this time, just surprised. The show moved fast. A few singers, a dance crew, a kid with knock-knock jokes that fell flat. Some acts got polite claps. Others were background noise for scrolling thumbs. Then the MC's voice crackled through the old speaker system. Next up, Grace Bennett? There was a pause, a cough. Someone shuffled in their seat. The clap that followed was sparse, uncertain. Backstage, Grace stood up like someone had pulled a string through her spine. She didn't look at the audience, didn't glance at the teachers. She just walked, one step at a time, onto the stage, her violin in one hand, her bow in the other. Kids in the front row elbowed each other. Phones rose. She stopped at center stage. A single spotlight buzzed overhead, casting her shadow long against the curtain. Someone had dragged out a folding chair for her, but she didn't sit. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She raised the violin to her shoulder and waited. The silence stretched. Mr. Buckley shifted near the stage door. Miss Dorsey leaned forward in her seat like she was waiting for a punchline. Someone in the crowd whispered, "She's gonna choke." But then she played. The first note trembled, thin, hesitant, like it wasn't sure it belonged, but she held it, let it bloom. By the fifth note, the room was frozen. Not a shuffle, not a cough, just stillness. Because this wasn't Mary Had a Little Lamb. It wasn't some TikTok cover or school band classic. It was something raw, something no one could place. Her bow moved like a dancer with something to prove. Her fingers flew, bending notes that sounded like grief, like anger, like a voice finally raised after being silenced for too long. Halfway through, the piece shifted. It surged. It wept. It fought back. Her eyes were closed, not from fear, but focus. She didn't need sight. Everything she wanted to say was in her hands, in the strings, in the air now thick with sound and truth. When she hit the high note, she held it so long the gym felt like it was holding its breath. Even Buckley, who'd been scrolling on his phone before, was still. Teachers leaned forward, uncertain, maybe even ashamed. The final note didn't fade. It lingered, hung like a question or a wound. And when it ended, Grace didn't move. She stood still, bowed down, violin pressed against her chest like it was part of her. No one laughed. No one breathed. Then one clap. From the back, then another, and another. Then the whole gym erupted. Not wild, not screaming, just full. Real. Some students looked at their phones, suddenly ashamed they'd recorded her, expecting failure. Malik was the first to stand. Then more followed. Even the kids who'd bet she'd freeze. Grace didn't smile, didn't cry. She didn't have to. She just turned and walked off stage, holding her violin like it had done exactly what it came to do. Monday morning brought gray skies and the smell of wet concrete, the kind of weather that usually made students move slower, slouch deeper into their hoodies and avoid eye contact. But not today, not for Grace. The moment she stepped through the double doors of Toledo Central, she felt it. Something had shifted. Students who once brushed past her without a glance now made space in the hallway. A few nodded, awkward but respectful. Others looked like they wanted to say something but didn't know how. By the lockers, a girl she didn't even know whispered, "That's her." Like Grace was someone you only ever heard about, not someone you passed in homeroom every day. It wasn't fame. It was something deeper. Recognition. Respect. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. She walked the same route to her locker, violin case in hand, hoodie sleeves tugged over her wrists like always. But this time, no one mocked her. No one rolled their eyes. No one made fake screeching sounds when she passed. Even the posters on the walls felt different, like they were finally hanging in a school where she belonged. Near the stairwell, Mr. Buckley leaned against the railing, phone in hand. When he spotted Grace, he straightened up like he just remembered she existed. "Hey, amazing job Friday," he said, flashing an awkward smile. Grace nodded once, not slowing down. She wasn't rude. She just didn't owe him anything. She passed the main office, then rounded the corner to room 213, fifth period math. Miss Dorsey stood at the doorway, arms crossed, a stack of worksheets in hand. Her expression was unreadable. For a moment, she didn't say anything. She just looked at Grace, like she was trying to find the version of the girl she used to ignore, the version that fit neatly into her assumptions. "Miss Bennett," she said carefully, "can I have a word?" Grace paused but didn't move closer. Miss Dorsey cleared her throat. "I owe you an apology. What I said last week wasn't right." There was a long pause. "I shouldn't have made assumptions," she added. "I'm still learning." Grace stared at her, quiet, not cold, just deliberate. There were so many things she could have said, sharp things, honest things, but instead she let the silence stretch, just long enough to make it count. Then she said, "You should have seen me before Friday." That landed harder than anything else could have. Miss Dorsey blinked, unsure of what to say. Grace didn't wait. She walked into the classroom, set her case down by her desk, and sat. Same seat, same silence. But nothing was the same anymore. At lunch, Malik slid into the seat across from her and handed over a carton of chocolate milk. No big words, no compliments, just a nod. "Next time we play a duet," he said. Grace raised an eyebrow. "You're not ready." He grinned, and for the first time in a long time, she let herself laugh. Just a little, just enough to turn a few heads. He never raised his voice, never showed off, never asked for attention. Malik Turner just let his game speak, until they refused to listen. One insult, one benching, one moment of quiet rage. That's all it took to wake a storm they didn't see coming because they never thought he could be more than a body. 16-year-old Malik Turner wasn't the loudest player on the court. He wasn't the guy pounding his chest after every dunk or shouting plays like a general. He was the one in the corner of the gym, earphones in, hood up, working on his footwork long after the rest of the team hit the showers. He didn't ask questions, didn't cause problems. He just worked every single day. Malik lived in the south end of Lexington, Kentucky, about 4 miles from Ridgemont High, the public school known more for its football program and prep track college pipeline than for its diversity. Most of the kids on the basketball team drove to practice in clean pickup trucks or their mom's shiny SUVs. Malik took the city bus, 40 minutes each way, practice or not. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with his mom and 2 younger siblings. Their place was tucked behind a gas station and a rundown grocery store that never had fresh fruit. Rent came first, shoes came last. Malik had 1 pair of beat-up Jordans he'd been balling in since last summer. But no one could touch him when it came to footwork and first steps. He had handles like water, movement like music. But most of the school didn't really see Malik. They knew him, sure. The quiet black kid, the one who barely spoke in class, the one who always had a basketball tucked under his arm and never wore anything flashy, the one Coach Randall only put in when the team was already up by 20. Coach Jeff Randall called him raw, said he lacked discipline, said he was all instinct, no structure. What he meant was, Malik didn't come from their world. He didn't play for a private AAU team growing up. His dad wasn't in the stands. He didn't have polished interviews or glossy recruiting videos. He had a cracked iPhone, a ball, and hunger that didn't leave room for ego. Coach Randall never said anything explicitly racist. He never had to. It was in the way he praised the white players for basketball IQ and called Malik athletic. The way he broke down film with everyone else, but told Malik to just keep hustling. The way he turned every incredible play Malik made into a lucky accident. Malik never pushed back, never made a scene. He just nodded, lowered his eyes, and went back to work. But silence doesn't mean surrender, and respect isn't always loud. Malik had been watching, remembering. Every slight, every side comment, every time a kid who couldn't hold his own in practice got more minutes because his dad donated to the Booster Club or played golf with Coach Randall on Sundays. Malik kept his head down, but he never stopped tracking the math. He knew the stats. He saw how many times he ran the floor, how many deflections he made, how often he set screens that led to buckets. Quiet things, invisible things. but real. And deep down, something was growing. Quietly. It wasn't rage, not the kind that explodes. It was something colder, sharper, the kind of heat that waits for the right moment, the kind that builds pressure inch by inch until silence can't hold it anymore. Because there's only so long you can be overlooked before your name starts demanding to be said out loud. And Malik Turner, he was done waiting. Coach Jeff Randall wasn't a bad coach, at least not on paper. He had 3 district titles under his belt, a couple of former players now riding the bench at mid-major colleges, and a reputation around Ridgemont High for being tough but fair. But anyone paying close attention knew the second half of that phrase rarely applied the same way to every player. From the moment Malik Turner showed up to summer tryouts as a sophomore, Randall had already made up his mind. He didn't see potential. He saw attitude. Not because Malik said anything, but because he didn't say much at all. He didn't ask coach about drills, didn't laugh at his jokes, didn't buddy up after practice. He just showed up, outplayed everyone, and left. To Randall, that was a red flag. "Kid's not coachable," he told his assistant during the first week. "All talent, no discipline. Doesn't respect the system." But Malik respected the game. Deeply. He just didn't feel the need to shrink himself for someone else's comfort. Coach Randall had his favorites. Players who fit the Ridgemont mold. Clean cut. Yes, coach. No, coach. The type of kids who'd played in travel leagues since 4th grade, with parents who sat front row and clapped even when their kid missed a layup. Malik didn't have that. His mom worked nights and weekends and barely made it to the games. His siblings sometimes watched from the hallway if the gym door stayed cracked. And Malik? He played like every possession mattered, because for him it did. But Randall couldn't or wouldn't see it. He called Malik raw like it was a weakness, instinctive like it was an accident. He'd praise white players for being students of the game, while labeling Malik explosive but unpredictable. The praise always came with a ceiling. Asterisks. During team film sessions, when Malik made a great play, Randall would skip over it. When someone else missed a rotation, Malik got blamed for not communicating. When Malik beat his defender off the dribble, Randall said it was too flashy and told him to stick to the basics. But when the starting point guard tried the same move and turned the ball over, "Nice try. Keep being creative." It was subtle, but it was constant. And Malik felt it. Every slight, every moment he was asked to shrink while others were allowed to shine. He never said anything, just nodded. But that nod started getting heavier, slower, not out of defeat, but awareness. Then came the lineup decisions. Despite dominating scrimmages and out-hustling every guard on the roster, Malik rarely cracked the starting 5. He'd be pulled after 2 missed shots, benched for attitude if he didn't celebrate a teammate's basket loud enough. And yet, when a starter turned the ball over 3 times in a row, "He's just off tonight. Let him work through it." Let him work through it. That grace was never extended Malik's way, because Randall didn't see Malik as a player with promise. He saw a problem waiting to happen, a chip on the shoulder kid, the kind that makes coaches nervous, not because they're trouble, but because they won't fit quietly into the box built for them. What Coach Randall failed to realize was that Malik never wanted special treatment. He didn't need a spotlight. He just wanted fairness, a chance to earn like everyone else. But fairness for kids like Malik was always just out of reach. And Coach Randall? He wasn't afraid Malik would fail. He was afraid of what it would mean if he succeeded. It happened during a Tuesday scrimmage, the kind of late-season practice where the gym was half empty, the air thick with sweat and repetition. The starting 5 were running sets against the second unit, but the energy was flat. Coach Randall barked from the sideline, clipboard in hand, his voice hoarse from 3 days of yelling, with nothing to show for it but missed rotations and lazy defense. Malik was on the second unit, as always. Even though he'd been torching defenders in drills all week, even though he'd out-rebounded their starting shooting guard in back-to-back scrimmages, even though he knew every play in the book backward, he was still wearing a red penny, reserved for bench players and practice fodder. But on that possession, something shifted. The ball swung his way near the top of the key. The defender was James Carver, 6 feet 1 inch, varsity captain, a coach's favorite since freshman year. Malik didn't hesitate. He gave him one quick crossover to the left, then another to the right. James stumbled. Then Malik hit him with a third, a snatchback so sharp it made sneakers squeak across the court like someone had slipped on water. Gasps, laughter, even a damn from someone sitting on the bleachers. James hit the floor. Malik rose up, fluid, controlled, and drained a clean jumper right over him. Network, no backboard. Nothing but silence after the swish. It was the kind of play that makes teammates rush the court, that gets clipped and posted to Instagram with fire emojis. That demands respect. But instead of praise, Malik got a pause, a long one. Then came the voice that snapped the energy in half. "Well, I guess they teach that kind of showboating in pickup games on the South Side," Coach Randall muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear, but quiet enough to claim he didn't mean anything by it. The room shifted. A couple of players exchanged looks. One kid laughed nervously. James sat up, his pride bruised more than his body. Malik stood still, ball under his palm, chest rising and falling, but his face, still, stone cold. But inside, it cracked something, because it wasn't just about the play. It wasn't even about the words themselves. It was about what they implied, that Malik's skill wasn't skill, that it came from chaos, from street ball, from something unworthy of structure or coaching, that it didn't belong, that he didn't belong. Coach Randall didn't blow the whistle, didn't acknowledge the moment, just told the team to reset. "Run it again," he barked. "No flash. Keep it simple." But nothing about what Malik did was flashy. It was smart, calculated, perfectly timed, textbook footwork. It just happened to come from a kid Randall never believed in. Malik didn't argue, didn't throw the ball down, didn't talk back. He just passed the ball to the point guard, jogged back to his spot, and kept playing. But the burn stayed. It stayed through the rest of practice, through the post-practice cool-down, through the locker room where a couple players said, "Yo, that was nasty," in hushed tones, through the bus ride home where he replayed the moment in his head like film, every second sharper than the last. He'd done everything right, and still, it wasn't enough. Not when your skin made your success look suspicious. Not when your game made them uncomfortable. That night, Malik didn't sleep. He got up at 11:42 p.m., laced his sneakers, and walked to the community court 2 blocks from his apartment. The lights were off, but the moon was out. He shot jumpers in the dark for an hour and a half. 1 play, 3 crossovers, 1 comment. That was all it took to remind him that being great wasn't enough. Not when someone in charge had already decided you were a threat just for trying. Miss Rivera had been watching Malik for a while, long before that scrimmage, long before Coach Randall's comment cut the air like broken glass. She taught junior English, room 214, 3rd floor. She wasn't flashy, always wore earth-tone cardigans, sneakers, and her long dark hair in a low bun. But when she looked at you, she saw you. Not the version you put on for school, the real you. And she saw Malik. He was quiet in her class, just like everywhere else. Sat by the window, turned his assignments in on time, read every book they were assigned, even the boring ones. When they discussed of mice and men, Malik wrote a short essay comparing Lenny's treatment to how Black athletes are often valued more for their bodies than their minds. She never forgot it. Most teachers didn't bother asking him questions. Miss Rivera made a point of it. One afternoon, just 2 days after the scrimmage, She caught him lingering by the door after the bell. His backpack was slung low, eyes fixed on the floor. "You okay?" she asked softly. Malik shrugged. "Yeah." She didn't push. Just walked over to her desk, pulled out a sheet of paper, and handed it to him. "What's this?" he asked. "A project. Optional. Document-based storytelling. Video or writing." Malik blinked. "You said you wanted to study kinesiology, right? Sports science?" He nodded slowly. "Then start now. Record what you do. Break down your own game. Talk about the why, not just the what. I'll grade it as extra credit if you want." Malik didn't say anything. He just folded the paper and slid it into his notebook. The next day, he showed up to class 5 minutes early, sat in the back with his phone out, not scrolling but watching tape of his own drills. By the end of the week, he had edited a 3-minute video. No music, no flashy effects. Just raw footage, jump stops, pivot foot drills, his routine for reading double teams, voiceover in his own words. "This is why I set a high screen on the left. I know their guard is right-handed and favors the baseline. This move isn't about speed, it's about deception." It was clean, smart, intentional. Miss Rivera watched it twice. Then she sent it to someone else. Her cousin Xavier had played D1 ball at Michigan State and now worked as an assistant coach at a small university in Ohio. She emailed him the video with one line: "You need to see this kid before someone else does." Xavier replied in 10 minutes. "Tell him to keep going. He's got something." Malik didn't know she'd done that. Not yet. She didn't tell him because it wasn't about a handout. It was about believing in something others refused to even look at. And while Randall still saw Malik as a raw athlete with too much edge, Miss Rivera saw a strategist, a student of the game, a young man already thinking 5 plays ahead while others were still reacting. The next Monday, she called him up after class. "I want you to do another one," she said. "Document this week. Practices what you're not saying out loud." Malik looked at her, uncertain. She smiled. "You're allowed to be brilliant, Malik. No one gets to take that from you." He nodded slowly. Something shifted behind his eyes. Like maybe, for the first time, someone saw more than what they wanted him to be. Someone saw what was already there. The next 2 games were disasters. Without Malik in the rotation, Ridgemont's offense sputtered like an engine running on fumes. The ball stuck. Screens were late. Their leading scorer forced shots that clanged off the rim. The team, once known for its rhythm and pace, looked disjointed, slow, predictable. Coach Randall blamed chemistry issues in the press interview, said the boys just needed to refocus. He didn't mention the fact that the only player who had been focused all season was currently benched for attitude. He definitely didn't mention the comment he made during practice. But word travels. It started in the hallway, quiet at first, a few players whispering in the locker room. A junior named Trevon, who had always been on the fence, said it out loud. "Y'all really think Malik got benched just for playing too flashy?" Silence. Then someone else spoke up. "Coach been treating him different since day one." By the end of the week, kids outside the team were talking. Someone who had filmed the scrimmage on their phone, just for fun, dug up the clip. The ankle breaker, the jumper, the silence afterward, and most importantly, Randall's voice in the background. They posted it to TikTok with the caption, "He dropped the starter and still got benched. Wonder why?" Let Malik play. It hit 50,000 views overnight. The comments lit up. "Coach sounds real comfortable saying that. This is why black athletes don't trust the system. He played that dude out of his shoes. Let him play at school. Things got tense, not confrontational, not yet." But Coach Randall noticed the stares, the hallway conversations that went quiet when he walked by. The way some players didn't make eye contact anymore during warm-ups. Even James Carver, the starter Malik crossed it up, had started giving one-word answers in film review. Meanwhile, Malik kept his head down. But Miss Rivera noticed something new, a quiet confidence, like something inside him had clicked. He uploaded another video for his project. This time, it included a voiceover not just about technique, but about perception. When you're black and quiet, people fill in the silence for you. They decide what kind of threat you are. They decide where your ceiling is. But the truth doesn't go away just because someone doesn't call your name. Coach Xavier saw the second video too, shared it with the head coach. 2 days later, Miss Rivera handed Malik a folded note in class. "We'd like to invite you for a visit next month. Coach D. Owens, Easton State." Malik read it once, then again. No expression, just a small inhale, like he wasn't sure if he should believe it. The team was still losing. But the truth was gaining ground. By the time the semifinal game came around, the noise had grown too loud for Ridgemont to ignore. The athletic director called Coach Randall into his office for a closed-door conversation. The school board was fielding emails. Parents, black parents especially, were asking pointed questions. And the media? They had started circling, curious why one of the most talked-about players in the region was nowhere to be seen on the court. Randall didn't apologize. He didn't admit anything, but he caved. Friday morning, just hours before tip-off, Malik's name was scribbled back onto the lineup sheet. No speech, no explanation. Just a quiet, reluctant, "You're in," mumbled in the locker room while the team laced up. Malik didn't nod, didn't smile, just stood up and got ready. But this wasn't just about basketball anymore. When he stepped onto that court, it wasn't for a trophy. It was for every time he'd been overlooked. Every time someone told him to tone it down. Every time talent wasn't enough because the people in charge already decided what he could or couldn't be. He had something to prove, not to them, to himself. The gym was packed. Foldable bleachers creaked under the weight of students, parents, faculty. Everyone who had something to say but hadn't said it out loud yet. The crowd buzzed with tension. Phones were out. All eyes were on number 3, first possession. Malik caught the ball on the wing. A defender lunged. He pump-faked, spun left, sliced through 2 defenders, and laid it in off the glass like butter. Next play, he intercepted a lazy pass, sprinted the full 84 feet, and finished with a reverse layup. By the end of the first quarter, he had 11 points, 3 assists, 2 steals. By halftime, Ridgemont was up by 8, and Malik hadn't said a word. But you could feel what he was saying, the way he moved, the control, the patience. He wasn't just playing to win. He was reclaiming space that had been taken from him. Moment by moment, possession by possession, even his teammates felt it. They passed him the ball without hesitation. The bench, guys who used to ignore him, stood after every bucket. And James Carver, the team captain, walked over during a timeout and slapped Malik's chest. "You're cooking, bro. Keep going." Coach Randall stayed quiet, arms folded, jaw tight, but even he couldn't deny what was unfolding in front of him. Malik wasn't playing angry. He was playing free. By the end of the third quarter, the crowd was chanting his name, not screaming, not wild, just chanting it like they'd finally learned how to say it out loud. Malik, Malik, Malik. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a correction, a reminder. He'd never needed permission. He just needed the ball. The final buzzer echoed through the gym like a release valve. Ridgemont had won, 62-54. Malik finished with 24 points, 6 assists, 4 steals, and not once had he raised his voice or pounded his chest. He didn't need to. The crowd was on its feet. Students, parents, Even teachers who never showed up to basketball games were clapping. Some for the win, some because they knew they just witnessed something bigger. Malik walked to the bench, sweat pouring down his face, chest heaving. Coach Randall extended a hand, almost out of obligation. Malik looked at it for half a second, then shook it. Not for forgiveness, for closure. Across the court, a local sports reporter waved him over. Malik hesitated. He'd never done a post-game interview. He wasn't one for the spotlight, but something in him said, "This is your moment. Don't let them write the story for you." He stepped up to the mic, still catching his breath. The reporter smiled. "Big game tonight, Malik. You were on fire. Got anything you want to say about that performance?" For a second, Malik just stared at the crowd. He saw his mom standing near the back, hands clasped, eyes glassy. Miss Rivera was near the baseline, phone lowered, just watching. James and the team sat behind him, nodding. Then he spoke. His voice was calm, but firm. "I've been on this team for 2 years," he said. "I've practiced longer than anyone. I've studied the game. I've earned my minutes. But until today, I wasn't seen." The gym got quiet. No one expected that. He continued. "Some people think being talented means you're trouble. Some people think if you're quiet, you don't have anything to say. But I've been speaking this whole time, through my game, through my effort, through the way I kept showing up, even when I got overlooked." A pause. Being black doesn't mean you only bring athleticism. It doesn't mean you can't think or lead or see the floor. "I'm not just here to jump high or run fast. I'm here to play the right way. And I've been doing that." There were no cheers at first, just stillness. Then a single clap, then a few more. And then the whole gym erupted. Not the roar of celebration, but the kind of applause that carries weight. The kind that says, "We heard you now. We should have heard you before." Coach Randall didn't say a word, but he watched. And for the first time, he really listened. Because Malik didn't just play. That night he spoke. The Monday after the game, everything felt different, but nothing had officially changed. Coach Randall still held his clipboard like a badge of control. The athletic director still walked the halls like politics came before fairness. And the starting lineup? Still announced by the same voice over the crackling PA system. But something subtle had shifted. The system flinched. Even if it didn't fall. Students who had never spoken to Malik were now dapping him up between classes. Teachers asked about his college plans. The video of his post-game speech had already hit 100,000 views, shared by athletes, alumni, even local civil rights groups. But Malik? He stayed grounded. He kept coming to practice early, kept running drills with intensity, kept his hoodie up and head down in the hallways. The difference wasn't in how he acted, it was in how they saw him now. Miss Rivera got called into a staff meeting midweek. The assistant principal, trying to sound casual, asked, "Did you encourage Malik to speak publicly about those things?" She met his gaze without blinking. "I encouraged him to tell the truth. Isn't that what we teach here?" No one pushed further. Coach Randall didn't bench Malik again. He couldn't. Not with the spotlight still hovering, not with university coaches now calling to schedule visits. Malik was getting emails from recruiters who hadn't even known his name a month ago. They'd seen the film, the statistics. But more than that, they'd seen the statement. Still, Randall didn't congratulate him, didn't praise him, but he started calling him by his full name during practice. "Turner, take the wing. Turner, rotate up." It wasn't warmth, but it was respect. The school held a student assembly that Friday. The principal gave a speech about equity and growth. He never mentioned Malik directly, but everyone knew why the auditorium was full. After the speech, a junior on the girls' basketball team stood up and asked, "So, What happens next? No one answered, because that's the part institutions always fumble. They respond when pushed, but rarely move on their own. But this time, the silence wasn't Malik's. It belonged to the system. It didn't collapse. It didn't apologize. But it shifted just enough to show it wasn't untouchable. And Malik, he didn't need it to fall. He just needed it to flinch. Malik didn't win a championship that season. Ridgemont fell short in the state finals by 5 points. No trophy, no banner. But somehow that loss didn't feel like a defeat, not for him, because what he gained was bigger than a scoreboard. He gained visibility, voice, power. Not the kind handed down from a coach or granted by a system, but the kind you claim when you stop waiting to be seen and make yourself undeniable. Malik's story didn't end on that court. It stretched far beyond the hardwood. Colleges reached out, interviews were requested, his video project was turned into a segment on a local sports channel about race and recognition in high school athletics. But more importantly, other students started speaking up. Players who had been benched unfairly, artists who were told they weren't a good fit, kids who had been quiet too long. Malik didn't want to be a symbol, he just wanted to play. But sometimes when the system forces you into silence, your very existence becomes resistance. And his presence on that court, calm, focused, unshakable, sent a message that still echoes. Talent is everywhere. Opportunity is not. Not because talent is rare, but because bias is common. Because brilliance in the wrong skin, the wrong zip code, or the wrong tone of voice still makes some people uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean it disappears. It waits, it sharpens, it rises when someone refuses to sit quietly. So if you're ever overlooked, underplayed, underestimated, remember Malik and keep showing up again and again until silence has no choice but to listen.